So welcome everyone to the last in our three-part series on the European Payment Initiative organized together by PCN together with Netcetera and G+D. So in the last two episodes, we discussed what the European Payment Initiative is and what it could look like from more of a technical standpoint. This week, we'll discuss how the EPI can actually succeed. And I'm joined today by Gabrielle Bugat, who's the head of e-payments at G+D, and Andrej Vckovski, who's the CEO of Netcetera. Welcome both.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having us.
So we always start with a bit of an introduction. Gabrielle, would you mind starting a bit of an introduction on yourself, please?
Yeah, for sure, Roger. So hello to everyone. I'm Gabrielle Bugat. I head the global e-payments business at G+D. G+D is, in a way, a very old fintech, more than 160-year-old, always been very involved in payments from cash to card to digital solution. At G+D, I'm heading the e-payments business, and it means going from designing things to selling and deploying, and it spans from Brazil to South Africa, Germany, or Australia. So international business focused on payments.
Great. Thank you. Andrej?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Andrej. I'm CEO and co-founder of Netcetera. We are also a kind of a dinosaur organization in the software industry because we are having the 25-year anniversary this year. We are a B2B software company that also has a lot of offerings and products in the payment space, about 800 people in various locations, headquartered in Switzerland, but also in Germany, Austria, and locations in Asia and Southeastern Europe. Yes, I have a technical background, but in the, I would say, past 10 years, that morphed into more and more business activities.
Great. Well, pleasure to have you both. Let's maybe go with a bit of a summary of what the EPI is all about in short. Again, for the ones who haven't listened or seen the two previous episodes on EPI, I definitely recommend you do that. But let's start with a bit of a summary. Andrej, would you mind giving a bit of a summary of what the EPI is all about?
Well, you know, in Europe, there have been already previous initiatives to provide a pan-European alternative to the big international card schemes that are dominating the market. And EPI is, I think, a new initiative that has, I would say, better chances to succeed than previous initiatives because it has a strong backing and it has some, I think, important elements in it that will help to succeed. But in general, it is to provide means for a cashless payment in Europe.
Gabrielle, anything to add there?
Yes, so indeed, it's a bank-based initiative. It's for Europe, with the aim of having kind of European sovereignty on payments. And the way I see it, it aims at bringing the best of us in this initiative, and it's bringing collective intelligence. So how can we group certain players at a regional level so that we can be quick in innovation, creating or using or leveraging on backbone infrastructures, but then creating innovation and being very fast in putting new things on the market, and ultimately in serving the consumers wherever they are in Europe with new ways of paying, and also with the solutions that they had not thought it was possible. At the end, what's very important is its speed. Standalone, different countries, the schemes or the payment, the ecosystem has been good. But if we join forces, can we be better, fitting the needs and the concerns of European consumers, but also building something new, adapted to European consumers?
Yes, it's a collaborative effort, basically, of the European Union to build something which is customer-centric when it comes to payments.
Yes.
It's not the first time, right, that Europe is trying to do this. So I think we had the Euro Alliance of Payment Schemes, there was Payfair, there was EU Viserv, and there was Monet. Why did similar initiatives so far fail, Gabrielle?
Failure is a strong word, and I like to consider glass half full. We've been capable in Europe to do a few things well when it comes to payment. Euro is a very good example of pan-European successful initiative. And I would say that recently with SEPA, there's been also an account-to-account capability to work together. And I would finally add that at local level, at country level, great initiatives have taken place. For instance, the schemes, if I take carte bancaire is a good example, creating interoperability at the scale of a country, creating the framework, the security framework so that people can pay. This has been highly successful. Thing is, there's such expertise, such legacy, then when you try to cross border, it's not always easy to find the right compromise on feature, to find the right compromise on infrastructure. So a few things have not worked in the past, but I'm sure that this time, and for several reasons, we are on the right rails.
Andrej, do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. Previous failures, or maybe that's a too strong word, as Gabrielle said, but the previous attempts that maybe did not work out that much, they also provide a lot of learning and a lot of insight in what has to be considered maybe a little bit different next time. I mean, it is hard to do something right at first, even if you want to fly to the moon, you have maybe several attempts and build several rockets. But I think we now have all the ingredients to go for such a really huge infrastructure undertaking for in entire Europe. As Gabrielle said, many countries have very successful national or domestic schemes. We have the digital world, which is giving abilities that were not there 10 years ago. I mean, it is now clear every person has a smartphone in Europe, but that was not the case 10 or 15 years ago. So that there are new possibilities there, and we have also those, like Gabrielle said, very successful cases. I mean, SEPA, even though that was kind of not the market-driven, but regulatory-driven initiatives, but we have now SEPA instant payment, and that's an excellent, I would say, foundation building block for future pan-European cashless payments.
Mm-hmm. And if I may follow up on Andrej's answer, there's a sense of urgency today because we see a lot of payments going digital and new players entering and new players starting to define the rules. Does Europe want these external international players to rule the game, or shouldn't Europe and the banks try to keep it under certain control? In Europe, we pay attention a lot on data privacy. We pay attention on anonymity, and so there are a few things. There are a few boundaries we don't want to cross. And if we don't have the right infrastructure in place, the risks is there. I would add another point. In the past, I've heard that it's difficult to have a simple shared system in Europe because we are so different in the way we pay. I live in Bavaria today, and 4 years ago when I arrived, I was really surprised by how many payments we do with cash. And it's different from Sweden, where I was traveling, and there I didn't have to use cash at all because everything was digital or card-based. And having that in mind, if people behave differently, can we still build the same payment infrastructure? Truth is, with recent pandemic, we have seen a certain convergence of ways of paying. With the fear of touch touching things. So with the migration towards touchless economy, there's a convergence of ways of paying towards contactless payment in cards or more online payments, so that there's not that much difference nowadays between the way we pay in Bavaria or the way we pay in Paris. And that's and the consumers have become very aware of how to do payment online, how to do 3DS, and it's becoming part of our daily lives. So I would say that the pandemic has accelerated a convergence of payment practices in Europe. And it's also a sign that EPI comes at the right time.
Yeah, so there's definitely indeed a good ground to build on. There's been maybe, like you said, Andrej, failures that we've had. We took our learns from that. There's a pandemic that we had that accelerated a need or an urgency to create something like this. What do you think EPI can make or break this time, Andrej?
Well, as we have been talking previously, I think we have to realize that we are not on a green field here. So all countries in Europe, they have one or the other national schemes or local P2P payment schemes, and they have local habits on how they do things. Even though there is convergence, as we discussed, there are differences. And I think if something like EPI will succeed, then we have to use what's there. For example, the SEPA instant payment as a clearing and settlement infrastructure. I think that's very important to reuse that. And I think we also have to work towards a maximum interoperability of those the national schemes, because I mean they are not going away. In some countries they are the dominating payment, cashless payment method. I mean, if you talk about card bank, Giro card or other systems, so we have to be fit somehow into that system. And I mean, Europe is maybe complex because there are different areas, but on the other hand, I think we players in Europe, we can also understand Europe, and we can kind of make the increased complexity also turn that into an advantage, because we can say, okay, we are acting, if you wish, global, but then acting local per country. I know that's a little bit phrasing, but I think by reusing what's already there, by respecting what's already successful in the countries and providing a lot of interoperability. And then the other elements, such as what did Gabrielle call it, collective intelligence. So it's utilizing the knowledge that's there in the industry in Europe will make it happen. But I mean, we cannot put the fact away. I mean, there is still a risk in there, because it will require time. We all want to be very fast, but until something like this succeeds, it still will require time. It will require a lot of funds. EPI is backed by a lot of banks that also have commercial interests. I think there is a good probability that when the business case is here, that this can succeed.
What about the political side then, Gabrielle?
So EPI is going to work if there's a good combination of vision, what you call the political side, and expertise. Working together does not happen by choice and does not happen by chance. It happens because there's a vision, and there are people, regulators, strong players, key players, capable to say, let's sit at the same table and let's find a solution. Let's find those compromises that's going to make it happen. So it starts with a political vision. It starts with a vision. Now, it's not because we have a vision that we can execute. And this is where EPI is going to be successful, by bringing to the table the payment experts. Netcetera, G+D are payment experts. There are other players in Europe who are payment experts, because we would know from our experience, we have implementations, or we have a long history in most of the countries in Europe. We would know how to make it work, what to pay attention to, because devil is in the detail. You can have the best vision, but still fail to execute if you don't understand what's behind. And as Andrej was saying, if you have the expertise and the vision, you also have some reality checks to do. First reality check is, let's be pragmatic. Nobody has the money to reinvent everything, and we have a strong legacy in place. So it's building from there. So that's hence why the expertise is so important, because we have to understand where we come from, or what we have in our hands. Some very good infrastructure have been developed over the last years. Let's use it. So that's the first reality check. The second reality check has nothing to do with engineers. We are both engineers with Andrej. Has nothing to do with expertise. The second reality check is, does it bring value to consumers? Because if it doesn't bring anything new, why would you change? And why would you adopt it? And we've seen over the years that consumers can change their habits. Consumer will adopt what brings value. I mean, when you take the metro nowadays in Paris, well, everybody uses DI because it's quicker, it's easier. And when you go in China, everybody's using now WeChat for lots of things. And we can be amazed by how quickly people can adopt new technologies when they truly deliver value. Value being something you see or something you no longer fear. And in payments, I think what we know about the way EPI is being designed nowadays, it's really bringing ultimately value and benefit to the consumers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in the last two podcasts also we discussed a lot about that, bringing value and how customer-centric it needs to be in order to be successful. There needs to be a reason for consumers to adopt it, and then combined with the political vision, the payment expertise that is needed in order to make this successful, do keep in mind, obviously, the technology that is there across the countries and how can we build on that further. Given the fact that you guys are both longer in payments, have you already seen projects like EPI across the world, Gabrielle?
I have, indeed, I have 20 years in this industry. I have lived in 4 countries and I've traveled in many more. So indeed, I have seen a lot of things. There are 2 examples I'd like to share today. Is more national, but as those nations are big nations, it's worth mentioning, it's India and China. I've been truly impressed, we start with India, by the fact that the scheme people and the government people there, they had a vision. So NPCI, Rouppe, they had a vision, and they've been able to implement in such a large country a vast array of digital, of new initiatives and new ways of paying. So from schemes on cards, but also a biometric system to unroll, and later also ways for non-banked people to still have access to payment infrastructure. And it took only a few years, but it's now a super machine of innovation, and it's also a machine for inclusion. So real vision, good execution, and it changed lives of many. In China, we can also see some similarities here, because there's definitely a vision, a government here or a national vision when it comes to payment. China has 5-year plans. They have issued their recent 5-year plan, and the number 14. And here, the number 14 states very clearly that there's a vision on e-currency. So it's part of the important fields of investment. They had in the past already deployed payment infrastructure in a very fast and efficient way, and the regulator will intervene whenever there's too much room left for creativity, I would say here, because at the end of the day, we're talking about payment. So anti-money laundering, the right control systems should be in place. So in China, we have seen a lot of private initiatives now being more supported or regulated in a way. And it has led people to totally change the way they pay. You know that if you take a taxi right now in Beijing, you will have a hard time them accepting cards or cash, because they're so used to accepting WeChat payments that it's become de facto way of paying. I've seen no such thing as complex as EPI, because here we really have different countries, different habits, different legacy. So, but nowadays we like challenge. We should not be afraid of challenge.
That's for sure. Andrej, what's your experience been with projects like these?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would say besides flying to the moon, there have been a lot of big technology-driven innovations on this planet that maybe could be compared. I mean, I don't want to start to talk about using the internet in a commercial sense, but if I maybe look at that from a slightly different angle and into the payment space, and just to also reflect that things can change. In 25 years ago, I would say, at least in the country where I live, but I would say also in most of Europe, credit cards were still a niche product in day-to-day life. So I mean, maybe a little bit more wealthy people, and so they would have credit cards, but most people would either use cash or maybe even cashless, but not as credit card, because it was not such a common thing. And it also started a little bit with the digital and physical mobility of people. Digital mobility meaning people being in internet and starting e-commerce is happening. So that was for a long time in many areas still the only way to pay. But then also the physical mobility, people would travel more. It was cheaper to fly around, and then you go to other countries and question, how do I pay there? And then credit cards start to be a useful feature. And this adoption outside of a little bit of a niche market then generated a lot of additional, I would say, innovations on top of that network to make card payments secure, to prevent fraud, and all these elements to make it a convenient thing. So in the end, it was driven by people wanting to pay in a convenient and secure and simple manner. So that's why I think even the most complex project, if it provides, as Gabrielle said before, if it provides sufficient added value to the consumer, and if it is sufficiently convenient compared with other means, for example, for payment, then this is poised to work. If you can let the politics a little bit outside of the game, then this will succeed.
Yeah, exactly. So adding value is probably the most important factor in order to make this successful, basically. So if you then look at it from your experience, but also the experience as both Netcetera and G+D, how, as a technology provider, how do you feel such a complex project is best to be approached, Andrej?
Well, I mean, if I connect this to this statement of adding value and providing really something, a challenge that we have in our daily lives is that a lot of things that we do generate value which is not perceived. For example, if we prevent fraud, if we make our chips secure on the cards, people in their daily lives, they do not realize this. Maybe at some point they realize, oh, that wasn't me with the payment, I want to have it charged back or something, but that's rare. So one of the challenges is that all those things that we do, I would say underneath in the low level of the iceberg, is not visible, but it's very necessary to provide then this value on the top, and so you could say, well, if you have to do all those things to provide a little bit value, how can that be done in a successful way? And I think the challenge will be, and there are already I think ideas floating around also in that respect, to select those elements where we can see, okay, here we have a small niche. where the value that is brought to the consumer can be brought to them rather quickly with, I would say, some not too big complexity. For example, if you want to do person-to-person payments cross-border in Europe, and you don't want to do that with issuing a bank transfer, but kind of simpler. I want to send you 50 euros, and when you give me your phone number or email address or something like this. I think this is, for example, an entry point, such a person-to-person payments cross-border, that could open here a space to as a first stepping stone to something like this.
Gabrielle, do you agree?
Yes. So as technology player, I agree. And I would add to that. First, when in case of a project that's a bit unique in complexity and unique in management of sovereignty, we have to stay humble. No company can deliver everything everywhere. So the success of EPI will rely on technological players, payment experts working together. As Andrej said, probably working together on the low-hanging fruit and then building from there. So working together means that Netcetera or G+D, for instance, we are positioned in certain segment, and we have to find who are the other companies, the other experts whom we can work with, partner with, to shorten time to market and to make sure that eventually something gets delivered and gets visible. So this working together mode, there's no one can win alone, is the first point I'd like to highlight here. The second thing is we have to work in a hybrid mode. And here, talking technology, it's a hybrid mode between bespoke and products, because we have to build a platform, so something that's the same for everybody, and then being capable to adapt to local needs, to adapt to specific client needs. So, and we need to have this flexibility, because we don't want to create the fast food of payment. We still want to do something where each and every can recognize its own food or its own type of restaurant. So for that, it's a right combination. It's a hybrid mode between a product platform blueprint approach and capability to adapt, to do this last mile with the right bespoke approach. And here it's also as you can hear, I really like the iceberg example of, or image of Andrej, because in our line of business there's a lot of things we do that's not seen, and here it's the move between front end and back end. So the front end, and Netcetera is very good in some of those, what you see has to be simple, has to be convenient. The back end has to be super secure. So the challenge and as technology provider is to manage both the front end, simple, and the back end, super complex, super secure, so that you can sleep at night. And I think that here, playing on our expertise, leveraging on the expertise from other players is the recipe for success. Just Great. Being humble.
And it very much sounds like a collaborative effort that has never been seen before, by the sounds of it, because you can't do it on your own. You need to work with, like Andrej said in the beginning, with the technology that is already there. There's a lot of companies in Europe that are already doing parts and bits of the EPI, what they're looking to achieve. So it needs to be brought together and then build something that is in the end going to be very customer centric and add a lot of value.
And if I may add to that, EPI should be API. And this is what is maybe also something that changed maybe in the past 5 to 10 years, so that also providers in that space, they realize sometimes it is good also to provide technical interfaces or APIs to others so that we can utilize these ecosystems of pre-existing components. And I think the thinking also, you could say also the regulators, PSD2 has also this open banking element in it, that by providing accessible interfaces will simplify connecting and plugging the things together.
EPI should be API then.
Yes, that's, I think that's one element that I would recommend them to go down that path. Yes.
It's a good motto to have. EPI should be API. It's a nice acronym. We always, in the last two episodes, we ended on more of a kind of a personal note about what it is that inspires you most about the EPI. You clearly are very passionate about talking about the EPI. Andrej, what inspires you the most?
You know, like about 10 years ago, we started to build in the country where I live, in Switzerland, we started to build Switzerland's real-time cross-settlement infrastructure. That's a backbone of the banking industry, also with this SEPA instant payment and so on. And that was a huge project for us. I mean, it was extremely relevant that it is super secure, super available, and all these things. And this was compared in the software world really like maybe flying to the moon and so on. And for me, being maybe part, I don't know yet where, but I mean, if EPI will succeed, then there will be a lot of things to be part of such a, I would say, travel to the moon project with other that would provide kind of the same sense of, okay, let's build the entire industry, all player, let's build something that's unique, that's super cool, where you can be proud of it, where you will tell your kids and maybe also grandkids, hey, you know, that what we did back then in 2020 or 2021 or whatever, that was a thing. So I think that this will energize everyone who is either in there or around that. Yeah, it's a huge infrastructure undertaking.
Being part of history.
Yes. Even it's only the payment history, but still.
Gabrielle, what about you? What inspires you the most?
I want to be part of the history as well, for sure. It's the EPI project is inspiring because it's maybe once in a decade or once in a lifetime. Then you can help and contribute to shape the way people on the street behave. As G+D, I travel the world and we've been involved in lots of projects, and I've seen amazing innovation machines, amazing things being done far away. Here and now with EPI, it's a great opportunity, a great chance to see an innovation machine in our home backyard, in our own backyard, so at home, and to bring all this expertise, experience we've developed over the years to our home markets, and I would say also is payment is so essential, and to make sure that the money is protected, that the data around users is protected. It's so essential. So let's do it right. And let's take it to the next level, to the next decade, to the next century, maybe. My kids are still young, but I'm pretty sure they will be the first users, because I will use them as beta testers, no doubt.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thanks both for sharing your views. It sounds like there's definitely elements and factors and maybe learns from the past in place that could make this a success. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this final episode of the free podcast series or videocast series, in case you're watching, together with G+D and Netcetera, talking about the EPI. So if you haven't listened to the two previous ones, I definitely recommend you to do that. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thanks both.
Thank you.